I was working for Chaosium as a psychiatric consultant and actually was helping with some of the revisions of the sanity rules way back. As you know, I'm a psychiatrist, and I've been into role-playing games from the early 70s because I was born in the late 60s. So I was around for Dungeons & Dragons in the first edition of Call of Cthulhu. When it came out, I loved it because I was already reading H.P. Lovecraft. I said, wow, they're making a game out of this, which was very cool. I remember even sending snail mails to Sandy Peterson. That feels like a strange eon ago. But anyway, so I was always involved, and from that, I was always interested in this. And so as I started to do more for Chaosium and other role-playing game companies, at one point I just said, it'd be cool, I should just combine all this. The reason I got really inspired to write it was I actually picked up the first edition of the Delta Green book, and I said, wow, these guys are really great. They went into so much complexity, and they clearly believe that the players of this game can handle real complex issues. And I loved it so much, I said, well, I'm going to write something too then up to that kind of standard, or attempt to. And that's why Unseen Masters came about. And here it is, or there it was, I guess.
Did you write Unseen Masters purely for Chaosium, or are they based out of your own games?
It's a combination. I mean, I've been playing the game for over 20 years, of course, and now online thanks to COVID-19. But yeah, it was basically through game sessions that I had with a group of people I played with for years, and decided to bring it up a notch level and write it up for a campaign.
So why did you choose modern-day New York as the setting?
So I guess it's no longer modern day, but as I say, if you can make, how's that song go? If you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. But however it goes is, at the time, it felt to me like, okay, although I'm a Canadian, I figured, okay, most people seem to, identify with American culture, even though this game is played all over the world, Call of Cthulhu. But, watching lots of movies and a lot of the things that these scenarios are based on is more like North American. And New York at the time seemed to be one of the most urban, dense centers around. And the whole point of, or one of the core parts of Unseen Masters is they're supposed to be set in a city, urban. So the horror is happening right in a city where you're supposed to be safe, as opposed to somewhere out in the wilderness. So thus it became New York.
The actual campaign is comprised of 3 parts. There's The Wild Hunt, The Truth Shall Set You Free, and Coming of Age. Can you tell us a little about them and how they came about? And what were your sources of inspiration for those?
Well, one thing is, as a base, besides the urban horror, was after you play Call of Cthulhu for a long time, and maybe you've experienced this where, somebody sees something and although their character would never know that it was a deep one or a serpent man, the player who's played way too much and has read too much goes, it's a Shoggoth, and go, what do you mean? I remember my friend would always call them from, I think, the Gloranthan RuneQuest world, go, those are god learners. And he'd always punish us whenever we would do things like that. So actually, all these scenarios were designed with a meta theme involved, which is, besides the mental health stuff, which we'll talk about, it was to intentionally trap people in their own assumptions. So the Wild Hunt, I'll go into that one. I've always loved Kolchak, and people don't know what that is anymore, but Kolchak, the Night Stalker from back in the 70s, who's inspired a lot of things, including the X-Files and many other sorts of shows. And the second outing of his adventures was called The Night Strangler, which is a TV movie, which was this wild alchemist story with a guy living in this underground city in Chicago. And I said, oh, I love that. And my favorite creature of all the mythos is the HoundsandJACKALS. It's just so cool. It's a time-traveling dog, and it's not even a dog. You don't know what it is, but I love dogs. So I said, okay, I got to combine them. And I kind of warped it all into many different things where it seems like you're hunting a vampire or a witch or anything else that seemed like you would fall into that, and try to divert it away with 10 million red herrings, specifically designed for experienced players to fall into because they know too much. And it's only if you actually follow the trail will you actually figure out what's going on. As I recall, you actually played through that scenario.
We played through the entire lot, and boy, we've had so much fun. And it really did. We've been playing for 20 plus years, 30, 40 years now. And you're absolutely right. It just catches you because you secretly think as a player one thing, and then it's just not. And you're doubting your own certainty.
Yeah, and that's too. So the Wild Hunt was basically more of a traditional hunt the monster. The truth shall set you free, which is also even a more wild one, I would say, was based on my love of Philip K. Dick stories. If you know Philip K. Dick, everyone remembers Blade Runner and things like that. But he wrote this story called Vale. What I've always loved about that story was the unreliable narrator who actually was psychotic. And even though he even told you he was psychotic at the beginning of the story, as you read the story, you forget that a lot of the characters in it are just his psychotic projections. And it's only during the story that you actually find out again when this encounter with this alien life form heals the narrator for a moment, for a little while, and all of his characters become him again. I said, that's really cool. How can I set that up in scenarios? I'm also a simulationist, and I design scenarios to actually replicate psychosis, where you actually do that. And I said, I want to do that in Call of Cthulhu. And so The Truth Shall Set You Free was all about making sure one character is being told totally different information than other players because their perceptions are totally changed because they've actually become psychotic. And because it's called Cthulhu, psychosis actually opens you up to the mythos. So again, one thing too, I should just take a step back. I've always worked with film industry, TV, productions and things, always trying to make proper representation of people with mental health issues so they don't get stigma associated with it. And that's what I want to do here too, is like to understand that a person who's acting very strange, what might appear to be horrible, violent things, in their mind, they think they're doing good things. They might be trying to save the world, even though their behaviors outside might be causing a lot of damage. And so that's how The Truth Shall Set You Free came up. And so it was basically, if you ever read Vale, that's the inspiration for it. And there's tons of Philip K. Dick in-jokes constantly throughout there, and a ton of other sorts of things from my old childhood, including, I don't even watch it, Spider-Man 1966 cartoons from ancient times. There's this great episode where he goes into this totally trippy universe called Dementia 5, which is also the basis of a lot of this scenario. And again, the whole point of that one is it's supposed to be spread out over other adventures, so it's a slow build as opposed to just a standalone by itself. Oh, and the last is coming of age, I guess, if you want it, which is basically, I've always liked those Damien Omen films as well. And besides the Hound of Tindelos, my favorite baddie of the mythos is Nyarlathotep, because he's everything. He's 1,000 forms. He has lots of cool stuff, and he's got his Egyptian side and all that. And so that was all built in. And there was so much back up material from all the Chaosium publications of different forms. I thought I would have some fun trying to combine them all into one coherent storyline. And again, the attempt to create a horror situation where it's not just you're fighting some alien mythos, it's actually a family member has come under the influence of it. And it's again a slow burn where you finally see how are you going to rescue this guy, or can you rescue him from being possessed by the Haunter of the Dark? Hopefully I'm not giving away too much. Hey, anyone listening to this, I apologize.
Spoilers.
Hopefully you're the keepers.
I mean, we had such fun playing it a few years ago. And again, it really did make us question both ourselves and our character, because it was so different from what we usually experienced with Call of Cthulhu. So it remains one of our favourite campaigns. And normally we prefer the kind of jazz age 20s, 30s. But Unseen Masters, I think, stands alone, besides the fact it actually won a Mary Seaman World Health Organization award when it came out, which I still think is the only role-playing supplement to do that.
Yeah, again, as I said, like, throughout my career, I've always been trying to help battle stigma and dispel the myths of mental health legends that just prevent people from getting help. And so part of the whole process of building this was to make sure, again, it would be in the service of doing that. So seems my peers and colleagues seem to think it was a good thing too. So I was very honored that they recognized it with that award.
Well deserved, I think. Well deserved. Now, you did mention there about Easter eggs for KDIC and Spider-Man Easter eggs in the campaign. And I noticed there were some Call of Cthulhu and horror ones when reading through it for the first time. Would you like to say more about those? Because it's quite a treat if you know that kind of background, just what you've put in along the trail.
It's interesting too. There's too many. And I'll just say why they put in Easter eggs. This was during the age during The Simpsons and shows like that were coming out. You say, what's that have to do with anything? The Simpsons demonstrated why it's so popular was it had a concept like every minute it had so many hits, references to various different shows, movies, and so on, that there was this whole metagame going on that constantly engaged you. And so the reason they're so invested of Easter eggs into this game and these scenarios was it was designed, again, for people who are longtime players as opposed to new players, because that's how you got trapped into wrong thinking. But also it's like, oh yeah, I remember that scenario, and oh yeah, and okay, yeah. So I mean, there's too many to give away, and actually I don't want to actually give any away because that's part of the fun of playing the game is doing that. I remember at one convention way back where two players who were really into it said, hey, you made one error here. And they said this was like, I forget what it was, about some sort of mystical stone or something. And I go, sorry, I ain't perfect, but there you go. But I was very happy to know that somebody, or at least a couple of people, were really into it so much they actually analyzed every Easter egg. And I guess my mission was accomplished.
It's a gift that keeps on giving if you read it and you have that background. They're really fun. So Unseen Masters, as we said at the start, came out some 20 years ago now, 2001. And that's almost 20 years after Call of Cthulhu itself came out, because it's almost 40 years since the game appeared. How do you think it holds up 2 decades on?
That I'm not sure, but one thing is, it's a scary thing watching movies that came out in your youth be made as remakes now. And I realized, it's moved on 20 years ago and so on. It's like, well, eventually, hopefully, there's Call of Cthulhu 1920s, Call of Cthulhu 1950s. Soon they'll have Call of Cthulhu 1970s. Maybe they'll have Call of Cthulhu 2000s. I think it'll hold up really well if they're doing a historical era campaign. And in some ways, it might be interesting because the 2000s was its own sort of thing before all the cell phones came out and all that. I mean, if you tried to actually run it modern day right now, you would have to adapt it a bit. Again, even though they call it modern Call of Cthulhu, it was, I guess, Call of Cthulhu 2000. And so does it hold up? It can hold up if you play it in that mindset where, what? I just can't Google the answers and I can't just, stay home and do everything from that regard. I think it would have to be played in the eras it was set to really, at least for the first one, the Wild Hunt, and the last one. The middle one, the Truth Shall Set You Free, is easily adaptable because that's just could be plopped into anywhere at any time. Just somebody has an encounter that allows them to go psychotic and gets connected to a certain great old one who will go nameless at this moment and slowly starts to act differently and slowly bring about the end of the world if they're not careful. So that one would hold up, I believe.
I think you're doing yourself a bit of a disservice because we played it 2016-17, modern as then, and it still held up extremely well across the board. So slight modifications, but hardly any at all. I personally think it's a great kind of timeless modern, quote, modern campaign in that sense.
You see, because I haven't played it since the 2000s. It's because that's when it came out, right? So I'm glad to know that you played it more recently. I thought you played it back maybe 20 years ago, but I guess maybe you redid it.
It was one of the best campaigns we've ever played in 20-odd years, absolutely. Now, as the writer of the campaign, do you have any advice for keepers who are looking to run Unseen Masters?
To me, Call of Cthulhu lends itself more to narrative, and the reason I've always loved the game was it gets away from the whole we fight a monster, roll dice and all that. And even though they gave all the stats to the great old ones, you fight a great old one, you're going to die, most of the time. To me, it's more about immersing people in the story and just keeping it moving along. There's lots of red herrings and ways to get lost in it. But so long as people are having fun, see, that's what I love about Call of Cthulhu. It's not like you have to so-called win. It's you experience the situation, the horror and the situation. And even if you do your best and everything goes to pot, that's still a great story and it's fun because that's Call of Cthulhu. So just to remind people, it's not we must defeat the monsters easily and it's okay. Nah, if there's lots of carnage or the world blows up at the end, that's okay.
It is. I won't say how ours ended, but yeah, it's also fun. There we go. So what are you working on these days, kind of game related? I noticed you said you play online now because of the current situation.
Yeah, just here and there every few weeks. And thanks to COVID-19, I play a little bit more than I used to. It used to be we have like the annual weekend, we'd get all together and have like a weekend of tons of role-playing and Call of Cthulhu. But in fact, we play a little bit more nowadays because of COVID. So every 2 weeks we have ongoing campaigns. What's interesting too is one of my friends actually showed me Cthulhu Wars, which is not Call of Cthulhu. Don't know if you know about all these crazy board games that have been coming out thanks to all the wonderful technology of 3D printing. And unfortunately, I got hooked into Kickstarter where all these wonderful games come out. And so one of the things I've been up to now, just as a change of pace, is moving a little away from role-playing games, although this is trying to create a role-playing game company, a board game company with board games that help promote mental health, but still are highly tied into my favorite themes of horror and mystery. And right now I'm just finishing off preparing for the first one coming out. It's called The Beast de Gévaudan. Don't know if you know, it's based on a true legendary, well, it's not legendary, I guess. It's a true historical story from the 18th century. They made a movie out of it called The Brotherhood of the Wolf. But basically, this game is you're a hunter, but it's all about political intrigue, manipulating the narrative for the people you serve. And you could try to hide the beast, but you don't even know what it is until the very end. It could be supernatural, could be just a guy in a wolf suit. You don't even know until the very end, unless you do some sleuthing along the way for the final confrontation. So that's what I'm up to nowadays, and it's a lot of fun too.
Is that going to be kickstarted?
It will be kickstarted probably in March 2021. Right now, we got the website up. It's beta testing. It'll be on the tabletop simulator of Steam probably next month, a beta version for people to play and give feedback before we go to creating like physical forms of it.
I look forward to keeping an eye out for that. Absolutely. So thank you, Bruce, for talking to me today. It's been a pleasure to actually talk to each other for 20 years. We first discussed by email, and now we're doing it on the internet. It's quite incredible.
Well, thank you again for inviting me.
Cheers, Bruce. Thank you so much. Take care.